Hi, I'm Septime Webre, Artistic Director of Hong Kong Ballet. A thrill to have my predecessor, the founding Artistic Director of Hong Kong Ballet, Mary Griffiths, with us. Hello, it's great to have you. Mary, this is an exciting time for us. Hong Kong Ballet is 40 years old. Tell us a little bit about the founding of the company. Not really, in a moment we'll talk about how it was founded and why. I really want to know about what it was like, how many dancers you had, what were the first performances, what were the circumstances of rehearsals, what was dancer life like in those early seasons?
It started with only 5 members of the company.
That's a tight group.
And I know now you have things like the 5-year plan. We didn't even have a 5-week plan. So our first performance was at the City Hall, and we were part of another program because we could only put forward about 10 minutes of dancing.
Sure.
But in the early days, we danced in the AC Hall, as we called it, in a tiny room, and people would say, well, why did you start? Well, if we hadn't started then we wouldn't have started.
Sure.
And class started at 10, and then we had rehearsal, and then I drove, and I would say at 5 o'clock, anyone want to lift to Hong Kong side? And so there was one time we were driving along the Kowloon main road, and we got a puncture, and army people came and lifted up the car and changed the wheel. And then shortly after that, we then moved into the art centre, and that was the basement.
Sure.
So we never saw the light of day.
Oh, goodness.
But it was slightly bigger than the AC Hall.
Actually, things haven't changed that much. We're now almost 50 dancers instead of 5 dancers, but we're here on the 8th floor of the Hong Kong Cultural Center. And we're up, not down, but there's no window in this room, with this ballet studio. What you're describing sounds unique, but also not so unique. So much of the history of ballet world, of our history, is about dancers just getting together and just doing it. We think of the ballet routes that got stranded in the United States in the 1940s, and the founding of the Joffrey Ballet in a station wagon traveling all over the place. Even your mixed program of having only 10 minutes of content. In fact, ballet had a history of being between opera acts, and you know, everything was mixed up.
Like the music hall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Tell us about some of the repertoire in that first year or two. What were you dancing?
Our main standby was Napoli, and this was taught us by William Morgan. And we could use any part of that, solos, duets, with the company. And we performed in playgrounds. That's where we got the most of our money.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was open air.
So it's free outdoor.
Oh yes, yes.
See, things don't really change. We've launched a huge pop-up series of performances as part of our Ballet in the City program. And we now do these big, I mean, they're large now. Last year, 30,000 people saw us in 2 days, but this kind of idea.
This little playground in Hong Kong or something. And
on stages?
On stages, yes. They built up the stage,
yes.
But it was in sort of sections, so quite dangerous. But we had to dance for about 10 minutes before we got our money.
Oh.
And if it rained, we had to think, well, we need our money.
So that must have led to a few...
So we danced without shoes and without tights many times.
Oh my goodness, really?
In order to get our money.
That's very avant-garde of you.
Yes.
Yeah, and tell us about the backstage. You told me a little story.
Backstage, there weren't any loos, so we had to use under the stage in plastic bags.
My goodness.
So things have come a bit further.
Things have come, yeah, we're quite the same now, but we do have...
And also, we had to carry our mats.
Sure.
All the dancers carried the mats and laid it up. We couldn't afford anyone to help us.
Sure.
We had a technical director who did the music.
And who were the dancers? Were they just like friends who wanted to dance?
No, I think one came from Hong Kong.
Yes.
Simon Tam. But the other 3, originally, came from mainland China. And they hadn't been allowed to dance proper ballet for about 10 years.
Oh, goodness.
Because of the Cultural Revolution.
Sure.
So they stood in 5th position for the first time.
Oh my goodness.
For many years.
Sure.
So we were
And Napoli, some serious repertoire.
Yes.
To jump from 5th position in tap for 10 years.
Yes,
Sure.
but they were passionate and they worked and they
Sure.
could do it. And they could do tricks and that sort of thing.
Sure. Interesting.
And I had to learn to speak a little bit of Mandarin.
Sure.
Come to class at 10 o'clock.
Sure. And did the dancers get paid?
Oh, yes.
And well, so tell us about that. Not just getting paid, which is nice, of course, but how administratively, how was it founded? How was it funded?
Well, in the late 70s, I knew that Hong Kong would pay for education.
Yes.
So I made a plan for the Hong Kong Academy of Ballet and the small print and a performing company.
Sure.
I wanted to dance, and I wanted that company.
You sneaky woman.
And so I made this project completely out of my head that had budgets and everything. And because it was Chinese, I had everyone earning a 13-month salary.
13 months.
Yeah.
Oh, well, great.
Is that not?
No, actually, we have a 12-month salary system now, so it's a year-round employment.
Yes, 13 months just means you have an extra one for Chinese New Year.
Sure.
You have a bonus.
Sure.
And I made.
You stepped backwards in that regard.
And I made this scheme, and I did the budget for about 3 years, and the timetable and everything, and luckily, supported by Kay Jones, who knew all the influential people. This plan was given to people at the Jockey Club,
yes,
and we got $2 million Hong Kong from the Jockey Club.
You were millionaires.
Yes, and also Sir Y.K. Powell supported us.
Yes,
and
so there was a $2 million budget in the first season.
Yes,
that's great.
No, I think we could only spend the interest.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not quite sure.
Sure. So you mentioned Kay. In fact, there were 3 founders.
Yes.
Three
Paula
women who walked down and actually applied.
Yes. Paula Lau was the one who was going to be the sort of the principal of the Hong Kong Academy.
I see.
She taught the students.
Got it.
We had 3.
3 students.
3 full-time students.
Wow.
And we had Miss Wu as our
Yes.
ballet mistress.
Okay.
And the first time I did class with Miss Wu, she kept on saying to me, harder. I'm doing it as hard as I can. But it was harder, meaning in Chinese quite good.
Sure. Nice. Hong Kong Ballet owes a great debt to the Hong Kong Ballet Group.
Yes.
Which was founded much earlier in the early 1960s by visionary ballet teachers that came together. I think this is certainly something that occurred in lots of places in the world outside of the European capitals, where there were these visionary teachers, largely women, who had ballet schools and wanted professionalism. And most of the students might be quite young children, but they came together, the Hong Kong Ballet Group, and put on performances. And so I know that the company sort of grew out of that effort.
Started.
Yeah, talk about that. And what was that Hong Kong Ballet Group like?
Well, I arrived in Hong Kong in 1972, and in about 1974, and I was pregnant, but I think about 1974, I joined the Hong Kong Ballet Group.
Yes.
And we did Swan Lake and Cinderella and the Two Pigeons, and the stars were brought in from outside.
Sure.
And I was sort of part of this, and I thought to myself, what a shame I can't do this all the time. I was a maths teacher at the time.
A math teacher, huh?
And I thought, what a shame we can't do it. So that's why I started to make up this fictitious ballet company.
That's funny.
Here now.
Well, yeah, that's great. Actually, Hong Kong Ballet Group is still quite active and a really important, vibrant part of the community. And I mean, I consider Hong Kong Ballet Group the antecedent, the kind of grandparent organization of Hong Kong Ballet for sure. And it's still very vibrant. Actually did La Sylphie just a couple of months ago, quite beautifully, with some guest stars from Vivi Flint actually staged it, and some stars from Royal Danish Ballet. It was a spectacular, really, really great show. You were artistic director for a period, and then you moved on to do many other functions in the Hong Kong Ballet. Tell us about that, and what are the other functions you did, and which slot seemed to make most sense for you ultimately?
Well, I was a dancer, and I thought to myself, I will never leave the studio. I will be dancing, Luckily, I had an injury, so I had to leave the studio. And then I spent a year in London learning choreology, thinking that they wouldn't get me out of this studio. I'm going to be here forever. And then I realised that it wasn't quite me, and I began to look for a position as a maths teacher again. But before I did, they needed a general manager. Maybe it wasn't called general manager. I think they called it an administrator. And they said, would you like to do it? And I thought, yes. And so I became the administrator. And
but all the while dancing, or
after
the injury?
Yes, after my injury. Yeah. So I had my first hip replacement.
Yeah, you're a bionic woman.
Yes.
I understand. How many hips?
5.
Right. I bet the metal detector at the airport goes crazy.
I'm half an hour in there.
Yes. It's like being stuck in a microwave.
So then I was hiring people and firing people, and Hong Kong Ballet is so nice. There were 3 senior gentlemen whose contract we did not renew. And the last performance they had was on a Saturday evening. And there was a typhoon.
Oh, goodness.
And they had to dance on the Sunday, and I had to go around and ask them, would you please dance again?
Oh.
Now, they could easily have said no,
Sure.
But they all did.
Well, I think we dancers we do it for love of dance.
Yes,
so that I'm not surprised. That's the ethos that we dancers have.
Yeah.
I think the years of training, the years in the studio, breed a humbleness and diligence and discipline, sensibility that just transcends other things. And we never lose that. We certainly take it on into other parts of our career. Speaking of training, tell us about how your youth and how you found your way into this great world of ballet. And where you grew up, and what was that training like?
I was a scholar of the RAD. The RAD, the Royal Academy of Dance, had a system whereby they had scholarships, and they trained people from the age of 10 to 16 with 2 free ballet classes a week, plus art and music lessons. So this was a wonderful experience.
Did that augment your home studio training?
Yes.
So you do your normal studio, and then you do this extra thing. Great.
And then at the age of 16, I went to the Royal Ballet School, as expected. And then by the time I was 18, I realised I wasn't going to be in the upper echelons of ballet. And I thought, and I was quite envious of Chic at that time.
You mean that dancing in the rain barefoot on a playground and going to the loo under the stage is not the upper echelons of ballet?
So I thought, no, I'm going to leave this world. And I went to Oxford, I read mathematics, and that was the end of my ballet career.
Name dropper, you Oxford girl. Royal Ballet School and then Oxford. Good, fine pedigree. A regular blue blood.
Yes. And then, what happened after that?
You fell in love, you got married, you had a kid, and missed ballet.
Once you have the urge, once you have the itch, you can't get rid of it, can you? And so when I was 32, I started dancing again after 14 years of non-dancing.
Are you kidding?
No.
Wow.
No.
Amazing.
And I looked in the mirror, I thought, there's a dancer there. And that's when I started to join the Hong Kong Ballet Group. So I was about 32 when I started that, and they were all about 16, all the other people. And then I wanted more, and I made this fictitious plan, and we were given money, and I gave up my job as math teacher and started the Hong Kong Ballet.
This is very ungentlemanly of me to say or ask, but I just did the math. So you're older than I expected, because I thought we were much younger than...
I'm 75.
Well, you look amazing. Tell us your secret. I know that you're like a gym bunny.
Well, only recently.
Okay.
And with 5 artificial hips, there's nothing much you can do. But don't go in the sun to keep the skin,
Oh, gosh. I grew up on the beach. That's why. Why we look a little younger, but we look about the same, I think, due to that. So now you're back visiting Hong Kong after so many years, from 1979 to 1919. I remember from 2019, 40 years. What's it like, and can you reflect on how it feels to see something that started so modestly. I mean, 5 dancers
so modestly.
In a playground, dancing, doing grand, entre chassis to grand plie in Napoli. One of that man's variations is really
maybe
really
turned
hard.
in as well.
Oh goodness, an entre chassis parallel with the 6th position. That's kind of cool. I'll try that in my next choreography. It's kind of fun. Tell us about coming back and what's it like to see the company in full blossom the way it is now.
Well, this isn't the only time that I've returned.
Sure.
I have my son here, but irrespective of him, I would come and visit the Hong Kong Ballet as often as I can.
Sure.
But this has been a special time, this 40 year. And how you've organised it and to bring all my colleagues back has been a joy. And when I saw the performance yesterday, I was blown away by it. I'm proud, but I feel that I shouldn't take any responsibility for it whatsoever. It is phenomenal.
Well, it's all started with you and Kay and Paula. But it was pretty exciting last night at our 40th anniversary gala performance to have, particularly, we have stars from all around the world, 7 international stars, our entire company, one of our beautiful ballerinas, soloist Chen Jiao, promoted to principal dancer status on stage to everyone's surprise after the bows, which is exciting. She's a beautiful ballerina. But one of the things that made me most proud actually was when Swan Lake music started, entrance of the Swans in Act 2. We had 2 beautiful international stars, Dorothée Gilbert and Marcelo Gomez, in the lead roles for this particular performance. But the core entrance of those girls just tonleveing on one after another with so much energy, so much enthusiasm, so fresh, as though the ballet were new, as though the ballet were a new piece, so invested. It was just inspiring to me as a director to see, to be have the honor of stewarding this ship that is crackling with fresh new energy. Even though it's 40 years old. So that's kind of fun.
Well, not even though. I mean, surely as it's got older, it's got so much better.
Sure. Well, I think so.
And it will continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 40 is a dual moment in time. But one of my first teachers, ballet teachers, was Stanley Hall. He'd been a principal a dancer at the Royal Ballet in the 40s and then went on to Roland Petit, etc. And he always said, "You're only as good as your last performance." And it really instilled in me this idea of being in the moment, another day in the life of ballet. Merce Cunningham said, you shouldn't be a dancer if you don't love the dailiness of it. If you're not a process person, it's not a place for you. And so being 40, it's a fun moment to celebrate, but I do think that process of every day being in the studio with the dancers, rolling up your sleeves, another day of pliés, another day of battement tendus, and another day of, these days everyone's very core. The world is much more aware of the core muscles than they were 40 years ago. And so
drinking water is phenomenal, isn't it?
Imagine drinking water. What was your poison of choice when you were a dancer?
We weren't allowed water.
Oh, really?
We didn't think,
Sure.
Now people just hold their bottles of water where they go.
I generally hold my venti skinny cafe latte when I'm teaching. But I do start every class when I teach, which is about once a week. Teach company class with 2 minute planking. Plank for 2 minutes before class. I mean, the whole company does. Yeah. So that's we bond over abdominal exercises, core exercises. Yeah. Talk about then what happened. How long were you with Hong Kong Ballet, and what happened to you afterwards?
After I was running the company as administrator, they asked me if I'd like to be general manager. They were going to promote this new position, but I knew that would be making speeches, which I couldn't do, and raising money, and I wanted to be in the studio and organising. So I said no, and so they appointed these people who were general managers, and it sort of left me out of it a little bit. So I thought, so I started the education unit, And that was the first time it had been done.
Sure.
And it was in English, because I'm English, I speak English, but clearly it had to be done in Cantonese, in the end. So after that, I thought, well, now the time has come, I'm going to go back to being a maths teacher. And so I was a maths teacher at KG5 and the Chinese International School, where I started a ballet team, of course.
Of course.
And then in 95, I went back to England,
Sure.
and I started my own ballet school with one student. I've got about 120 now.
Nice.
I still do it.
Nice.
I make all the costumes. So ballet is still a great part of my life.
You make all the costumes?
Yes, I'm very quick at it too.
Oh, really?
But very good.
Oh, good. And did you do that back in the day? Were you the one sewing stitching
No, I mean,
Napoli?
here, of course, we... somehow all the costumes just materialized. You didn't really think about them. If only I'd looked to see.
Actually, that still happens. Joanne, costume mistress, is amazing magician. I'll ask for something, and the next day it will be there. It's really amazing. Very dedicated and really great, beautifully skilled.
So I arrived in England, and I started this little team of children, teenagers, and I thought, well, who's going to make the costumes? Me, I suppose.
One of the fun things that's been occasioned by the 40th anniversary has been this kind of chat group that we're part of, which is all of the former artistic directors of Hong Kong Ballet over a 40-year period. Everyone's still around, and actually I had the great pleasure of knowing almost everyone before I became artistic director here. And so we have a kind of informal email chat group with yourself, Terence Etheridge,
Gary
in
Trinder.
order,
Okay.
Gary Trinder,
Yes.
who was next? Bruce
Stifel.
Stifel, then Stephen Jeffries, John Meehan, Madeline On, and myself. And it's been really fun to have everyone share their stories. I think you win the quirkiest story about the loo, going to the loo under the stage in the playground. But I think we all share, we're forged by the same fire and bonded by made of the same cloth. We had this really shared experience, but it's been interesting to read reminiscences of each artistic director over time to see how the company has grown, and your stories about the playground, and then Gary's story, 2 directors later, not very much longer later, suddenly repertoire, he was really bragging about all the repertoire he brought in of Nacho Duato and Yuri Killian and Kenneth McMillan.
Names we could only dream of.
And Frederick Ashton. I mean, some of the greatest classic, particularly classic, a good amount of Ashton and McMillan, but then all of those amazing choreographers during the 80s that were really making important work. It was really pretty impressive that it went from like 0 to 60 so fast. And particularly the introducing repertoire, a repertoire that actually, with a much bigger budget today, we can't even afford much of it now, so much of it now. So that's been pretty interesting to see the cycle. With your son here in Hong Kong over time, have you been able to see the company in its life cycle?
Yes.
And maybe, what are some particular highlight memories?
Well, whenever I go, I'm so in awe of the dancers. I haven't got any particular memories. I'm so proud and pleased with what they've achieved.
It seems that another thing that was interesting to me in sifting through all of the kind of old photographs and videos, I mean, I sifted through hundreds with colleagues, particularly with Lindsay Chan, a founding member of the company, and also with Linda Fung and Iwagami, a long-term member of the company who's now a ballet master. Hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And it seemed to me that there were relatively early on, in the mid-'80s, the first full-length ballet, I think was Giselle, with the first full-length ballet, but coexisted throughout the history of 40 years. Really great classics, Giselle and Swan Lake and La Bayadere and Female Gardet and etc. And at the same time, a heck of a lot of new work made in the company in each decade with different different generations of contemporary choreographers. These seem like they've been really important. It's a classical company, and the classical dancing is fantastic. But there's always been this really creative side of it. At least that's certainly the Hong Kong Ballet that I know. Was that part of the DNA? Like, did you have a vision for the kind of repertoire that would eventually be danced by the company?
No. We had no future thoughts at all. But I knew that my company was made up of people from all sorts of backgrounds. And I thought, well, think of the ballet in England in the 50s or the 40s. And I thought, well, let's put on ballets that they did.
Okay.
And I did things like Witch Boy and Three Dances of Japanese Music.
Sure.
And Street Games and these water gall ballets who did Western theatre ballet and Scottish ballet. And but I didn't have any because we couldn't imagine doing a full-length ballet because you didn't have the people.
Sure. You quipped something about misshapen to me a couple of days ago. That was so funny. What was it?
Well, at the beginning, we were a collection of misshapen dancers. Tall ones, thin ones, fat ones. No, never fat ones, please.
Beauty comes in all sizes, Mary.
But turned in and turned out.
All right, there you go. Mary, what would you say are your hopes for Hong Kong Ballet for the next 40 years?
Well, again, I don't really think about the future. I'm just so proud of what you've accomplished, and I just hope that it will go on and be successful and have the money and maybe premises.
Sure.
And maybe a school.
Nice. Those are all great wishes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's great to chat with you. Again, I'm Septime Webre, Artistic Director of Hong Kong Ballet, with our founding Artistic Director, Mary Griffiths. Such a pleasure to have you back in the studios.
Much. Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.